Welcome back to HLock Gaming. In today's video, we're going to go over some buffs, debuffs, and disables, as Simon calls it. But right here, you're seeing Fateless's client for the game. He mentions in here Mac, Windows, and then having it on Android. So no iOS for alpha, but that's not surprising because I believe iOS has a fee when you submit apps or something along those lines. Whereas Android, I believe it's free. So makes sense. A few things he touches on. He essentially says here, if you think you signed up for the alpha and you didn't get an email, like you searched, you're deleted, your spam, you can't find it. He says go to the website and try and sign up. So it seems like you still might be able to get in. So if you missed out, go do that. As of right now, they're still planning to drop in July. He says probably late July. He does also say there's a few systems that they really want to make sure they have polished for this test so they can get good information on it. So it might get pushed back. We'll have to wait and see. All right, let's take a look at some stuff in video. All right, I brought this skill up to talk about some divinity stuff. He went over stats a bit, and most of the stats are pretty typical as far as what they do for the character. I will say it does seem like they're going to have more characters like this that are based on HP and attack, as opposed to just a single stat. So while that can make things a little bit more complicated, it does give you more options in terms of gearing. So I think that's a good thing. But what I was wanting to talk about is the initiative stat. So he said this is the speed at which you get your ultimate or your divinity, right? So a higher initiative each turn you take, it fills your bar more, is how he described it. But he also mentioned that it can affect this number right here, the gain 200 divinity whenever an enemy is defeated. And as we'll see in a minute with the buffs and debuffs, there are ways to bump that up. Now, is there also going to be, gear sets? We'll have to wait and see. But I thought that was interesting too, essentially if your initiative is higher, I don't know how many points you have to get it up to raise this, but when somebody dies, maybe it becomes 212 now or 210, who knows? But that's a very interesting thing, and it really ties into that thing they were talking about, I don't know, a few podcasts ago. Maybe Brad was talking about it, how they sort of have two speed systems, the regular speed and then the ultimate speed system. And they're very conscious, it seems like, of different ways to tweak that. All right, but let's get to the main course of this video, which is the buffs, debuffs, and disables. All right, I'm going to actually turn the sound on here so we can just hear Simon go through these so I don't just repeat them. I will stop them at certain times and kind of offer some thoughts.
About the different status effects then. We're going to run the way through this. Henry's pulled this together for us because it's not in game just yet as a screen, but we've got some pretty obvious stuff. So things like accuracy up, accuracy down. Pretty obvious. It's just going to boost your accuracy stat. There are 3 different ranks to both of those. We have got, I guess I'll go down buffs first. We've got attack up, increases your attack in battle. Barrier, absorbs incoming damage equal to the strength of the barrier before depleting HP. So it's basically going to be like a shield effect.
So I will point out here that you see barriers can stack and be increased. And we will see in a minute shields where the skill reads essentially the same, but we'll see for shields that they cannot be stacked or increased. So a distinct difference there. How that really plays out in the game, I don't really have a good idea yet. I'm a little confused on that in terms of the implications of it. Why would one you could build up and stack and the other you cannot? So I guess we'll have to wait and see how strong shields are, how that kind of works in reference to barriers, how they differ. Anyways, let's keep going.
Defense up increases our defense. Immortal, HP cannot be decreased below 1. And then once it triggers, you'll lose this effect, or you'll lose a stack of this effect. Initiative up increases our initiative stats, so that's our ability to gain ults, meter, or divinity. Intercept redirects an attack to the hero that placed intercept. And again, once it triggers, the duration is reduced. So you can basically push attacks away from you.
So I'm a bit confused here. He says push attacks away from you. It's hard to read. I'll click back. But it says redirects an attack to the hero that placed intercept. So to me, I'm reading that as you're pushing attacks to you. Redirects an attack to the hero that placed it. So I read this as like a tank would place this on a caster that doesn't have very much health to keep them alive. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it or something, but let me know down below what you think. But let's keep going.
Triggers, the duration is reduced. So you can basically push attacks away from you. Mend reduces bleed stacks by 1 and heal 10% max HP at the start of a turn. Phoenix instantly revive upon death with 100% turn meter and HP. It's pretty damn insane, actually. That one might need looking at. Protect. Ally who placed this buff takes damage for someone instead.
So this is kind of how I was reading intercept working based on the wording of it, not what he said. Ally who places this buff takes 15, 30, 45% of this damage the unit would receive instead. Whereas the other one redirects an attack to you. So you would essentially, it's like protect but 100% because you're taking the attack. And again, let me know down below what you think, Am I misunderstanding this or something? But let's keep going.
Basically protecting one of your teammates. Radiance reduces and reflects a percentage of attack damage received. Reflect the next non-resisted debuff received. So you're pushing debuffs back at someone. Resistance up just increases your resistance stat. Retaliate, counterattack enemy attackers when hit. Sharpen increases your crit damage stat and your strong hit damage. Shield absorbs incoming damage equal to the strength of the shield before depleting. Shields cannot stack or be increased.
So yeah, that's the interesting part I was saying there. Barriers, it says, can stack or be increased, but shields cannot. And I can't really see why one would be that way and another wouldn't, unless maybe they have specific skills. If you want to think about some of the problems Raid has had where you can deplete a shield to cause damage, that might be the only thing I can really think of. I guess let me know down below why you think barriers could be increased and stacked and shields cannot.
So we've got speed up, which is pretty obvious. Stalwart, immune to disables. So duration is reduced when receiving a disable. So let's say someone tries to put a sleep on you or something, it will just remove a stack of Stalwart from you. Vanish, you cannot be targeted. And then Ward, immune to attack damage. Duration reduced when triggered. Okay, so pretty strong ones in there. We've then got the debuffs. So accuracy down is pretty obvious. Acid. So it disables armor sets and deals 5% max HP damage at the start of a turn. Deals double damage to shields and barriers.
So if you recall on my starter video, I was choosing Ramses, who has acid. My logic was I think a straight good damage dealer will carry me to the point that I can farm better characters who can do things that maybe the other starter champs can do that Ramses can't. And seeing the way acid works, I'm definitely liking it. The 5% max HP damage at the start of each turn, that's good. Deals double to shield and barrier. That's probably going to be very good for bosses. As far as armor sets, I guess for the beta, we'll have to wait and see if characters are built in a way where they essentially have armor sets, In a lot of these games, they don't really have that, so I don't think that's going to be too applicable. This might be more beneficial in a PvP sense, but we'll have to wait and see.
So basically, this is a way to disable sets that are annoying or basically like locking you out or something. Ether Burn increases the target's chance to weak hit and reduces divinity by a percentage depending on the level on all heroes of the team. Attack down, pretty obvious, reduces their attack. Banish. This one's not on many heroes because it's crazy. Enemies that die with this debuff or is placed before death cannot be revived whilst this is on. When a revive occurs, the duration of this debuff is reduced. So basically, somebody's dead on the floor. If they're banished, then if you try and revive them, what it's going to do is tick down a stack of banish before you're then able to revive them. Blaze. This is basically a burn effect, so deals damage equal to enemy max HP.
I will say it's pretty interesting that they have levels of this, because I think if you compare it to Raid, there's only one version of HP burn, and the poison skill is when we have the different levels, and then in that case there's only two. So I'm not sure if this is so they can keep, rares sort of at the rare level. Because if you want to compare it to Raid, you can have sort of not great champions that have a great skill because of how it works. Or you have certain enemies that are not enemies, characters that we say are like, oh, a legendary in disguise. I wonder if they're doing this to kind of avoid that. So you still have a solid character with like a 2% HP burn. Huh, interesting. All right, let's get to the next skill, Bleed, which seems great, especially since it can stack up to 10 times and 1% of max HP.
On all heroes of the team. Bleed, this is a stackable thing, so damages an enemy for 1% of their max HP each turn, stacks up to 10. Block Revive, enemies that die with this cannot be revived. Blunt reduces the strong hit and critical damage of an enemy. Charm takes the next attack for the enemy that placed this debuff, and then the duration reduces when it's actually triggered.
So I kind of view that as the debuff version of that skill we saw earlier, which I thought was saying you would take a skill for somebody else. This is the same thing, except you would put it on an enemy unit, so they take the damage of whoever you put it on. Or I guess not who you put it on, you would have to put it on them. Like your character would have to have that skill, so when you're about to get hit, it gets redirected to an enemy. See, that one makes sense. I'm still kind of confused a little bit on the buff one based on what he said.
Corrupt, the unit that places this debuff steals any buffs received. Duration reduced when it's triggered.
All right, let's take a better look at Corrupt here. The logo looks kind of like a poison apple, which is kind of what Corrupt sounds like, being poison. So it is a little weird that it steals debuffs. Or wait, it's a debuff and it steals buffs, sorry. Duration reduced when triggered. So the way I read this is you put it on somebody, and if the, buffer on the other team throws out like some type of AoE buff, whoever placed this will actually get that buff. So to me, I think they should change this almost to call it Siphon. I know usually you think of Life, but I think that's a better name for how it's working and what it's doing. You're taking something from them. I don't know. Let me know down below what you guys think of the name Corrupt. Do you think it should be changed? But let's keep going.
Any buffs received. Duration reduced when it's triggered. Cursed, reducing incoming healing and shield stroke barrier. So you're just basically trying to lock out the enemy's healing and stuff. Defense down just reduces the enemy's defense. Drain, so the attackers deal increased damage and heal for some of the damage that they do. Just a life steal, but with a damage buff as well. Hex. Oh, I've got a typo on this page here for Hex. Hex is actually meant to be allies also take 5, 10, or 15% of damage received. This is halved for AoE damage. Okay.
So think of that sort of as a bad version of Ally Protect. That's the easiest way to think about it, I think.
Initiative down decreases initiative stats. We've then got lock core abilities. So basically your core's not going to be able to be used. Lock passive abilities, lock ultimate abilities, all pretty obvious, but very, very damaging. Bear in mind, you're building these things up. We've got resistance down, decreases resistance. Speed down, decreases speed. Terrify increases your divinity cost by 50%, and then vulnerable increases damage dealt by debuffs by 20, 40, and 60%.
All right, I'm going to pause it real quick because you saw there we saw lock, core, passive, and ultimate. And I was kind of like, well, why wouldn't they add lock basic to essentially keep the character from getting, any type of skill? But then I was like, well, if it's turn based and the other two skills are on cooldown and you lock the basic, you effectively can't take a turn. So that kind of just screws up a turn based game. So that's probably why they didn't do it.
Okay, let's just have a look at disables then to finish.
Oh, also I wanted to mention this, like, because a lot of this stuff over here in disables sounds a lot like debuffs. So I was like, why would they separate it? And I was thinking it might be because we can get armor sets that when you have, let's say, a full armor set, you get 10% extra buff or 10% extra debuff or something with disables. Or maybe because these are all, have a percentage thing in them, having it with the debuffs messes it up if this set buffs the debuff, you know what I mean? So I think that's why they separated it out. I think we're going to see sets that will increase either buffs or debuffs.
This off. Do any not make sense, I guess, for what we're trying to do with the game? Or is there any way you're like, damn, that sounds really interesting? Okay, confuse. So these are disables. Basically, it's a way of locking out enemies or making them less effective than they should be. So confuse. This unit attacks a random ally with its basic ability, but doing reduced damage. So if you confuse a bunch of the enemies, they're going to attack their own team. Despair. Skips the next turn, cannot receive positive buffs or effects. Duration is reduced when an attempt to put a buff or something on. So let's say you've got 2 stacks of despair. You could have someone who does 3 buffs for your team. The 3rd buff would get on, but the duration would be reduced by the first 2 buffs. Freeze. Skips next turn. Incoming turn meter fill effects are also reduced. Morph. Increases hero's battle attack stat by 20, 40, or 60%. Petrify skips the next turn. Divinity effects are reduced. Sleep skips the next turn. Incoming damage from attacks is increased, and the duration reduces when you're attacked. Stun just skips the next turn, and Taunt attacks the unit that placed this disable with a basic ability but doing reduced damage.
We got some late breaking news. Update on a few skills in the video. For Hex, allies take 5, 10, 15% of damage received. This is halved for AoE damage. In the video I said this is like the bad version of Ally Protect. I didn't mean bad as in it sucks. I meant like evil twin version. If you think of it in terms of Ally Protect, you're taking the damage for a teammate, whereas this is almost like a damage spread. You're making other enemies take damage from a specific target. So that's what I meant by the bad version. And then the real interesting one here, Morph, transforms the hero into a creature, wolf, bear, or frog. Hero retains their stats, but only have one ability. So I'm guessing that's probably going to be basic, so you will essentially do almost no damage even if you have good stats. So it does make me wonder if the old Morph, where it said the attack went up by a certain percentage, I forget what it was, 20, 40, 60 maybe, if that is still in the game in a different form. Like, was that, some crazy armor set maybe or something? I don't know. Like, they clearly didn't just make that up. So it's still in the game somewhere. So I'll have to wait and see where it is. But it also made sense at the time, Morph, like, I don't know, just think of the Hulk. That's kind of a morph, and he gets way stronger from Bruce Banner to Hulk. So it still made sense with the name, but we'll have to wait and see. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Okay, that was it. Very interesting skills. You guys know the ones I'm a little bit confused on, or I think maybe wording could be clarified or the name could be changed. Not anything huge there, and I'm sure we'll figure it out by playing. Also, stay tuned for my next video. I'm going to try and get it out when the embargo lifts, which I believe will be Friday morning my time. But if not, it might be on Saturday the next day. But is another leak for Godforge. Actually, some stuff I talked about in that. It would have been nice to know this stuff before, but I already recorded it, so remember that when you see it. But if you like what I'm doing and you wouldn't mind throwing me a like, I'd appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, I'd like that as well. I'd really appreciate it. And thanks to those that have done that over the past week. Every little bit keeps me going and encourages me. This has been HLock. Thanks for watching. Bye.